This program is brought to you by Peaceful Warriors Foundation, celebrating the music, life, and stories of veterans. For more information, go to peacefulwarriorsfoundation.org.
We found out in later years that once the war was over, they were going to get rid of all of us. Going to bring the Marine Corps back like it was lily white. They didn't need us anymore. As a young boy in Manassas, see, I lived out in the country, and on Saturdays, my grandparents lived out either further than I did. They would either come by on Saturday evening to pick us up, my brother, was only two of us, and take us into Manassas, which was a big thing as a boy then to go into Manassas, to get that 5-cent cone of ice cream and that little box of Cracker Jacks. And the Marines from Quantico came to Manassas on Liberty at that time when I was, So I guess it was just something the way they looked. They didn't look like the Army, excuse me if anybody was in the Army, or the Navy. And the way they dressed, and they were just different. And I guess that maybe went into me from childhood about the Marines. Of course, I'd heard something about the Marines. And that, I guess, was the opportunity when I was able to go into the Marine, or any branch. Because at that time, they were cleaning Manassas. Every man that was eligible, black, white, blue, or green, if you were eligible, they took you out of Manassas to go in some branch of the service. It was 3 of us that volunteered for the Marine Corps out of high school. And this was in March. We went to Richmond. We took a physical, and everybody that passed the physical, they were sending so many to the Army, so many to the Navy, so many to the Army Air Corps. It wasn't Air Force then, it was Army Air Corps. So when we passed that physical, and everybody that got on the bus from Manassas, except the 3 of us, they stopped the end of the physical with us. And they said, wait a minute, we have 3 men who have volunteered for the Marine Corps. Now, we had passed the physical. We had to go back through that physical to get into the Marine Corps. And then when we passed that second time, just the 3 of us, everybody else was on the bus to come back to Manassas. The 3 of us, we had to read, we had to write, and they took us outside and walked us around. And after that, they took the 3 of us to Broad Street in Richmond to be sworn in. I guess it was a recruiting depot, recruits. They swore us in. Now, this was in March, but they said, now you have March, April, and May to graduate. We're not going to let you go into the Marine Corps till you graduate. The Marine Corps has 2 recruit depots. As you said, one in Paris Island, one in San Diego, California. If I could walk out of my door like this, and Paris Island was right there, or San Diego was right there, you had to come all the way, wherever you lived in the United States, you had to come to Montford Point. And they stopped us at the gate. And so the MPs said the N-word, get off the bus. So we got off the bus and we lined up, and they said, all you N-word, empty your pockets, because we have knives here for you. You won't need your knife. And this MP walked up to me as a young man from high school. I had a hat on like youngsters do. And this MP reached up and grabbed my hat, and he put it on the ground. and said, you so-and-so, you won't need this hat anymore. Now, Montford Point was rigged up for us at prefabricated huts. We didn't have barracks, and those prefabricated huts were something that was handed down from the CC camp. And these prefabricated huts, if it rained outside, it rained on us inside. And where they had this camp fixed up was swamps, snakes, rats, and the whole bit. That was us. Sand, that was us. And of course, we had white drill instructors at that time because we were just getting started. So Montford Point was just something. In other words, we found out later that it was temporarily. It wasn't something for permanent. It was temporarily. And the next morning, when we got up, they put us in a room, which was maybe about 15 of us, I guess. And they said, we're going to read something to you. So the guy would read a line, punishable by death. He would read a line, punishable by death. So we started looking at each other and said, hell, ain't nothing you can do in here. They ain't punishable by death. So we found that wasn't true. They did some things to us that normally wouldn't be. By being right by the swamps, I'll just give you some of the things. By being by the swamps, dusk dark, by being in the summertime, see, with a lot of mosquitoes, they would take us right by the swamps, dusk dark, and mosquitoes, you could almost grab them. And they would make us stand at attention. You couldn't move. The only thing you could do was twinge your nose or your face. And the DI, his famous word, did you eat, sound off like you crazy? Yes, sir. Let those so-and-so mosquitoes eat. That was their famous thing. That's so the mosquitoes could do what they want. But, trick, you can't smack a mosquito. Once you got in the jungle, that sound went a long ways. But see, we didn't know that. But that was part of the training, although it might have been brutal at that time. You couldn't afford that sound to go in the jungle. And any of you know what a footlocker is? You put your clothes in a footlocker. That footlocker weighs better than 50 pounds or better. Do you ever know what a duck walk is? You get down on your crotches like a duck, and that footlocker up over your head, and you walk until the DI got tired, not you, until he got tired. And there were some brutal things like young men that came in there that never shaved. I mean, they might have a little fuzz on their face, but you got to shave. And the DI would give you maybe a day or two. Not me, because I was already shaving, but some of the guys didn't shave. And he said, tomorrow when you fall out, I want that fuzz off your face. Well, you know, some of them are stubborn. They didn't believe it. You come out there, and when the DI inspects you every day, he said, oh, you got that fuzz. He reach and get your bayonet and scrape that fuzz off your face. Did you hear what I said? Scrape that fuzz off your face and reach down and get a handful of sand and rub it on your face. Say, from now on, I want you to shave. The white Marines who were out of boot camp, you know, around our camp, and they said, we went through boot camp. Some went through Paris Island, maybe some went through California. They said, we don't know how you did it. I'll tell you this. They said, we don't want you. You don't belong here. You're not Marines, you never will be Marines, and you can't make it up as a Marine. So this is no place for you, the N-word again, and we heard that plenty. In other words, sometimes I had to think about what my name was, because I was called everything else but my name. And when they said, you don't belong here, you can't make it, you'll never make it, and believe me, they did everything under God's creation to make sure we didn't make it. But we decided, just a few of us, if the Buffalo Soldiers or the Tuskegee Airmen and all of those guys way back before us made it, then we can make it. So we even talked about the ship. Our people, slaves, came over here on the ships. If they could make it coming across those waters, we don't have any idea how many days it took to come across that water. And the way they were on those ships, if they could make it, then we could make it. So we made it. It was a struggle, but we made it. Well, let me tell you this. Once you get out of boot camp, it's a change. There's a difference once you get out of boot camp. Even during the segregation, it was a difference. And in Jacksonville, North Carolina, or in the South, wherever we was, the white Marines, I give them credit. Nobody, I'm talking about my experience, wherever we were, they made sure that did nobody mess with us. They said, you a Marine? Don't. See, those they didn't care. If you were a Marine, you were a Marine, black, white, or whatever you was. I'll give you an example. I had to go from a little town outside of Montford called Jacksonville. You go to Jacksonville to catch a bus to either Rocky Mount, North Carolina, or Wilson to catch a train. I had to catch a train from there to Washington, D.C. if I wanted to come home on Liberty. Then once I got to Washington at the train station, I had to catch a streetcar to the bus station to come back to Manassas. But anyway, all of that. But what happened one Sunday, I had been home on Liberty, and I got back to Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And see, then it was so many military people, Navy, Army, you had to get in line. Wherever you went, you had to get in line. So we were all in line this night at Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And the bus driver, so it was still segregation. The bus driver says, you all come, but they can't get on. When they said they're talking about us, they can't get on. So the white Marine said no. Said, these men got to be to camp the same time I got to be to camp. And said, we're going to get on this bus the same, just like we in line. So the bus driver said, okay, let them get on, but I can't drive the bus. The Marine says, what do you mean you can't drive the bus? He said, don't you have the keys? So the bus driver said, yeah, I got the keys. He said, well, give me the keys, let me see them. He said, now I'll tell you what, if you can't drive the bus, I'll drive it. So I'm telling you the truth. We left the bus driver standing there, and the Marine drove the bus back to Jacksonville, North Carolina. That's what they thought of us. Even though it was segregated, they did not mess with anybody, mess with us. We finished boot camp. If you live west of the Mississippi, you got 15-day furlough. If you live east of the Mississippi, you got 8-day furlough. So we didn't have the nice looking khakis like the Army had. No back pockets. You had the starch and on your pants. You had the starch and on your shirt and necktie. When we finished boot camp, some of the guys says, I can't go home like this. I mean, which we were pretty well beat up. He said, I can't go. The Marine Corps has you so mean and evil from the names you... See, they can't do that now. That the guy said, man, if I go, I might even cuss my mama or do anything. I can't go home. Well, I said, look, I don't care what it is. I'm going home because I might not never go home again. So some of them didn't actually go home. So I went home, and then, well, I guess a bunch of us who would get furloughs and came back. And when my papers read the 51st Defense Battalion, that's all it was supposed to have been. That one trial battalion, 51st Defense Battalion. So we came back, and some other guys came on from furloughs, and they got it. When they finally got that 51st Defense Battalion organized, we left Montford Point and went over to a little old place called Camp Knox, where they trained dogs, Marine Corps trained dogs. So that's where we was. So then we was still wondering what was going on. So the colonel called us out one morning, and he started calling names. So he says, I guess you men wonder why you were called. So we said, yes. And I said, yes, sir, yeah. So, so he said, you men were picked to be drill instructors. I said, Lord, to myself. I said, Lord, no way in the world I could treat another human being the way they treated me. When I say me, I mean the whole, all of us. So he says, is anybody here that don't want to be a drill instructor? I'm not sure, but I believe all hands went up. He said, well, I'm sorry. He said, you might well put them down. He said, you were picked to be drill instructor, and you will be so-and-so good drill instructors. So he said, now just look at all of you. All of you standing here are volunteers. Everything here is a volunteer. He said, but from now on, we're going to start getting draftees. He said, we're going to get cutthroats, we're going to get slickers, we're going to get everything from the God sent. And he said, we got 11 weeks. And he said, after 11 weeks, we don't care what come in here, you're going to be ready. All they did with us for those 11 weeks was trained us day, night, and eat. We couldn't go like to the theater on post. We couldn't go to the PX. We couldn't go nowhere. Just those 11 weeks, they trained us for everything off the street to come in here. And that's what we did, 11 weeks. So after those 11 weeks, they put us as assistant to drill instructors, white drill instructors. And I think, I'm not sure, after about 2 platoons. In the meantime, the other guys who were coming in here, they were training them to be ammunition companies or depot companies, which was working outfits. But the other guys, they were out on the beaches. Have you ever seen these airplanes with letters behind the airplanes going across the beaches? Well, they had a long sleeve behind that airplane. And those guys on the beaches were shooting that leaf, that sleeve from behind that airplane. And they were in mortars and all of this stuff. These guys were shooting those stuff. And I'd say after about the second or third platoon, these guys, other guys were shooting mortars and all doing everything. Training, in other words, training for combat. Every Marine is trained for combat. I don't care if you were typewriter, hook, bunk, hunky, or cook, you were trained for combat. Everybody. So after that, so one afternoon, they called us out. And so we said, now this was a little odd to call you out in the afternoon. So then we heard all of this noise, the sirens and all of this going on. So what in the world is going on? Would you believe? Here comes this big convertible limo. Was President Roosevelt. He said, men, I got a short speech. He said, now you men on that uniform have broken every record that the Marine Corps has ever had. As far as I'm concerned, you're just as good as any Marine that put that uniform on. Send them overseas. That's what happened. So now these other guys was coming in, when they finished training them to make a platoon, they would pick a drill instructor to go as acting platoon sergeant. Nobody had any rank. They would send them overseas. And that's how it got started, just send them overseas. As fast as they could get them, and they would send them all overseas. And all of my buddies were leaving me, and so I had to go to the colonel and tell him, say, Colonel, I want to go, because I hated being a drill instructor. As I was a drill instructor, I trained men to be Marines. Not all of this other stuff, cruelty and stuff that they had to go through. But I made sure they were in condition to know all the weapons that they need to know. They had to be in condition to do what they had to do. We could go out there and walk a mile, run 20 miles or whatever. It didn't make any difference, but we were ready. So that's what they started doing with all these other men coming in. Send them overseas. And you'd be surprised. They went overseas as ammunition companies, depot companies. But once they got on those beaches, all that was gone. They had to fight just like everybody else had to fight. And those white Marines was glad to see us on those beaches. My first was on a little island called Bonica. And then as you secure an island, the government lost a lot, throw away a lot of stuff. What's on the island, they just bulldoze it. Then you go to another island. That's where we were going from island to island to island on our way to Japan. So after Bonica, then I went to Saipan. And then after Saipan, after that was secured, I was on my way, my company, we were on our way to Iwo Jima. But they secured Iwo Jima before we got, so we went to Okinawa. And that's when we were on Okinawa when they dropped their bombs. And they were secured, that's when the war ended. But that was our last hop off before ending, going into directly to Japan. And thank God that they dropped those bombs, because we lost a lot of men on every one of those islands. I couldn't understand why we did the same thing at every island. The ships would bomb, and those Japs were dug in. They were just sitting there waiting. But we didn't have anything to take us on the beach. You had to wade in the water. And it was sad that sometimes your buddies, you just had to push them aside, because those Japs was waiting. Just slaughter guys, just going, but we had to do the same thing. I got out in 46, and I was working and going to school, and I got this letter in 1950. This nice little letter in 1950, report to Quantico. So I said, now I'm still single. I said, am I in the reserve or am I in what? I didn't know. So I talked to my mother about being single and whatnot. And where I was working in the government. And as what I did, obeyed, I went to Quantico. So when I got to Quantico, was quite a few of us there. And we were all in this room, and we was wondering, what is all this about? And so here comes this doctor. Doctor came in, and he walked around, and he looked. And he says, anybody have to be led in here? So we said, no. He says, well, it looks like everybody can see then. Yes. He said, one thing for sure, your heart's all right, because all of you are alive. That's your physical. I'm still single, but it was most of the other guys were married. So these guys said, wait, Doc, I'm married. Wait, look, I got my business. And would you believe some of the guys said, look, Doc, I got my disability from this. Everybody was from World War II. They got my disability. He says, I don't give a so-and-so. I'm going to waiver everything. You have your so-and-so back in 10 days. That was 1950. See, in World War II, if I'm not mistaken, we had about 8 divisions. And after the war, they disbanded all those divisions except 2. It's a division always on the East Coast, and it's a division always on the West Coast. So they had to scrape borrow, steal, anything they could find, a telephone number or address to call us back in for the Korean War. My family veteran story is my brother went in the Army before I did and found out when he was in the Army, as far as I know, that he spent most of his time, especially overseas, with General Patton. He was with General Patton. And the other things that he would tell me how he would train in Mississippi and different places. Now see, was segregation also during that time. They wouldn't even give them a gun. They used sticks to train with rather than a gun for a long time. And of course I had, let's see, three uncles in World War II and 3 uncles in World War I.